Well, I want to welcome everybody. I'm Emily Pachetti. I'm the clinical nutrition manager at South Shore Hospital. So a little bit about me before I actually came to South Shore Hospital about two and a half years ago. I've worked and specialized actually in geriatric nutrition and nutrition for aging. So when I was asked to do this presentation, I was really excited because this is really where my passion and my interest are when it comes to nutrition and my field of work. So welcome. So what is healthy aging? So over the years, what researchers have come to terms with or concluded is really healthy aging falls into three different domains. One is the physiological domain, so as we age, being free from disease and impairment. The second domain is psychological, so having good cognitive function as we age and emotional vitality. And the third domain is sociological, so having healthy, strong social ties and strong social relationships as well. And what healthy aging is actually these three domains together. And studies have found that individuals who typically age successfully tend to have extremely strong social ties in addition to being free from cognitive impairment, as well as having minor chronic diseases. So it really demonstrates the interconnectedness of these three domains. In my philosophy, when it comes to nutrition and really healthy aging in general, is that nutrition is just one aspect to promote healthy aging. But if we really want to age healthfully in a manner that we desire, we really need to remain physically active as we age, manage stress in a healthful way, maintain strong social, healthy relationships, getting adequate sleep, and trying to refrain from smoking. Actually, when I was driving here today on the radio, there was a study done recently in the UK that demonstrated those who smoked but decided to quit had a 20% reduction in cognitive decline as they age. So really, nutrition is one aspect, but it's all of these aspects together that will really promote healthful aging. But really, what is healthy aging? It's really up to you and what you think healthy aging is. So as we go through this presentation, I want you guys to consider these questions, sort of, what does healthy aging mean to you? How do you define your health? And what's important to you as you age? Because we all have different goals and different values, and as we age, those will change as well. So everyone's definition of healthy aging will be different. So I wanted to touch a little bit on aging actually before we move on to the topic of nutrition. So as we age, what aging is, it's being in a chronic inflammatory state essentially. And so we know that there's this bidirectional communication between our brain and our immune system, which promotes this constant state of inflammation. But what we also know is that nutrition can help mediate this pro-inflammatory state. And we also know that this chronic state of inflammation leads to neuroinflammation. So basically inflammation of your neurons in your brain, which then contributes to cognitive decline. So there's these components in our food called phytochemicals, And these phytochemicals are known to help mediate this pro-inflammatory state to help keep your brain sort of safe or heal from that chronic inflammatory state. So what studies have shown over the years is that these main dietary habits are associated with healthy aging. So they include the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, and the vegetarian or vegan diets. So we'll talk about each of these diets as we go through this presentation. But what's most common that these diets have are they're rich in omega-3 fatty acids, they're rich in phytochemicals, rich in fiber and B vitamins as well. All of these diets are known to be associated with healthy aging, and what do they all have in common? Well, you'll see a theme as we go through today that they're all promoting variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and rethinking sort of where protein comes from, right? Especially here in America, we think of protein, what do we think of? We think of meat, right? So, but we can get adequate protein from other sources, including fish and non-animal sources such as beans, legumes, tofu. But what these diets also promote is making sure that you get adequate sleep, but also when you're eating better, you tend to be sleeping better too. So there's that relationship. Making sure that we remain physically active, as well as maintaining those strong social relationships. Really, studies have shown that those relationships that you have and maintain are so imperative to your cognitive health as you age. So again, nutrition is one aspect of it, but really the big picture is staying active, but having good sleep, because that's when we're sleeping, our body rests, our brain heals, and we wake up rested, and those social relationships. I can't stress that enough. So I wanted to start off with the Mediterranean diet. So the Mediterranean diet, you'll see this is sort of like the old school food pyramid, but what I liked about it is, again, you'll see here on the bottom, it's demonstrating the importance of adequate exercise and healthy relationships, but then the base or the majority of the pyramid is really fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats. So you'll see like the olive oil here, the Mediterranean diet really stresses using olive oil as your main source of fat, but also it really focuses on utilizing fresh herbs and spices as well, because we underestimate the power that garlic and onions and fresh herbs have, such as like basil, rosemary. So by utilizing all of those components, you're going to be getting lots of fiber, lots of phytochemicals, and a mix of the vitamins that you need. In particular, as we age, B vitamins. And then it goes, next is the fish, your seafood. It really tries to promote having seafood at least 2 times a week, and really trying to focus on your fatty fishes, so like your salmon, your mackerel, your tuna, sardines. That's where you're getting your omega-3 fatty acids. And then lean protein, so chicken, eggs are okay too, with a little bit of dairy. And at the very top, you'll see your red meat and your sweets. But there's also important to drink plenty of water. Hydration is key. And you could enjoy your occasional glass of wine. I always recommend to sip on water throughout the day. And urine is really can be the best way to determine if you're hydrated or not, making sure that it's light yellow and not dark. What I have found too is everyone finds it difficult. How do I follow a Mediterranean diet? What does that look like? You're telling me to eat plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Well, how do I do that? What does that mean? So really trying to have vegetables at each meal is what I recommend. When we're snacking, have snacks as fruits, or rethink fruit as a dessert instead of your sweets on occasion. And then trying to eat seafood twice a week is the recommendation. But what I really like about this layout is it suggests try to eat vegetarian one day a week, or at least one meal a week, because studies have shown that the usage of non-animal protein sources has such great cardiac benefits, as well as additional benefits for overall health. And in particular here in America, I feel like we really focus a lot on meat as our main show for all of our meals, when really we should rethink meat as more as a side dish to our main meal, because we all get enough protein. In fact, most of us are over consuming protein. And actually, as we age, we metabolize our food differently. And so what happens is when we age, our stomach acids aren't as strong, so we're not absorbing and breaking down as much protein as we do, or as we did when we're younger. So as we age, starting from the age of 30, we naturally lose muscle mass. Every decade we lose more and more and more. It's a natural phenomenon of aging, but studies have shown that through adequate nutrition and physical activity, in particular resistance exercise, we can actually not only maintain our muscle mass as we age, but if we lose muscle mass, we can actually gain it back regardless of our age. So it's really important to eat consistently protein throughout the day. And I have a graph on that a little bit later that we'll discuss more. And now the DASH diet. Has anyone heard of the DASH diet? Yep. Does anyone know what it stands for? So it stands for dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So it originated back, I believe, in like the 1980s to manage high blood pressure. This diet has been around for over 40 years now. So we have over 40 years worth of research on this diet in particular. So what studies have found is it's not only good for managing high blood pressure, it's also really good at helping to lose weight, maintain that weight loss, but it's also really good at managing diabetes, cardiovascular disease as well. And you'll notice it's very similar in the Mediterranean diet too, where it really focuses, again, on eating plenty of whole grains throughout the day, plenty of fruits and vegetables. So it's recommending 4 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables throughout the day. Moderate in dairy, and if you're going to do dairy, try to choose low fat or fat-free dairy. Lean protein throughout the day, so it recommends 6 servings of lean protein. But what it does call out that the Mediterranean diet doesn't necessarily is it recommends 4 to 5 servings of nuts, seeds, and legumes throughout the week. I like this slide because I thought it broke it down a little bit more easily, but what's great about the internet is there's wonderful tables on like the DASH diet that you could actually print out, and you could keep track of how many you could say, oh, I had a serving of whole grains and a serving of fruit at breakfast, so you could mark that down, and you could keep tabs on how many servings you're having throughout the day, which can actually be really helpful in the beginning to really figure out where you're at in the intake of your vegetables, your fruits, your whole grains. The MIND diet is one of our last main diets we're going to talk about. Has anyone heard of the MIND diet? No. So it stands for the Mediterranean DASH Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. The MIND diet. So as the name says it's a combination of the MIND diet, of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. It was developed at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, and studies this study found that following a diet similar to the MIND diet lowered risk of developing Alzheimer's by 53% in participants who followed the diet rigorously. However, what they also found, though, is for individuals who followed this diet moderately, still had a 35% reduction in developing Alzheimer's disease. And further studies have demonstrated that 2020 study done, including 882 older adults, and they determined that the risk from dying from all causes was reduced by 37% for those diet who matched more closely to the MIND diet than those who matched least to it. So it shows you that you don't need to follow a diet 100% exactly as it's recommended to reap the benefits. I think a lot of us think that, oh, well, I'm not even close to eating like that, so I can't even try because it's totally out of reach. But to get the benefits of healthy aging from nutrition, you can make little dietary changes and still reap the benefits. So overall, the MIND diet, again, right? I'm like a broken record. Whole grains, fruits and vegetables, lean protein. What the MIND diet calls out a bit more is saying nuts every day, where the DASH diet said 4 to 5 servings a week. Again, healthy fats, so olive oil. Berries, it calls out in particular, saying 2 times a week we should be consuming it. For vegetables, it calls out the green leafy vegetables, trying to have that every day. And beans every other day, where those are the foods that in particular, we eat them, but we don't really probably think much about them. But the reason why berries, greens, and beans are called out, there's multiple reasons. So the beans, because again, it's a good source of fiber and protein, and the fiber associated with the beans have also been associated with lowering cholesterol. Fiber, high fiber diet has been associated with a decrease in colorectal cancer, as well as other cancers as well. Nuts are rich in unsaturated fats. So there are some saturated fats in nuts too, but studies have found that the fat combination of the nuts are overall a healthy balance. So they're actually very good for you. And then the greens and the berries are rich in, again, vitamins, minerals, fiber, but also those phytochemicals I mentioned, the ones associated, found in the berries and the green leafy vegetables have been associated more with decrease in certain cancers, being anti-inflammatory, so it's protecting your cells from the harmful radicals. And what these radicals are is that, right, we go outside and we have the UV light, we have the pollution, so these chemicals create an inflammatory state for our body and creating these free radical cells in our body, which causes damage to our healthy cells. So what these phytochemicals or these antioxidants do is protect our cells and help keep our cells protects them from the damage of those free radicals. So what I like to point out too with the MIND diet is that it's telling you to increase eating a lot of foods more than the decrease. So it's telling you to eat less red meat, eat less butter or stick margarine, less cheese, pastry and sweets, and fried and fast food. But it's telling us to eat a lot more green leafy vegetables, berries, whole grains, nuts, beans, poultry, fish, olive oil, and it's okay to have a little bit of wine too, the MIND diet says. So how do you implement the MIND diet? So it recommends trying to have at least 3 servings of whole grains a day, eating a salad or a leafy green vegetable once a day. It's okay to have 1 glass of wine, and utilizing olive oil as your main source of fat. Having berries twice a week, poultry at least twice a week, fish at least once a week, beans every other day, and nuts at least 5 servings a week. And it's limiting your consumption of red meat. The recommendation is 4 servings. So if you think about it, you could have red meat 4 days a week. That's pretty good. I don't think that's that restricted. No more than 5 servings of pastries or sweets a week. So you could have dessert 5 days a week. That's pretty good. Less than 1 serving of cheese a week. This is where I find that most of us really struggle with. Cheese is delicious and high in saturated fat. And then less than 1 serving of fried or fast food servings a week. So it's attainable. And again, studies have demonstrated you don't have to follow this 100% to reap the benefits. Studies have shown if you moderately follow this, you still get at more than a third reduction of developing Alzheimer's if you follow a diet like this. And over the last few years, or I feel like the last 10 years, the vegetarian and vegan diet seems to, I feel like, got a revolution and it's starting to get more popular again. And as we age, we can, if we want, we can still follow like a vegetarian or vegan diet. The important aspect if we follow a vegetarian or vegan diet is making sure that we're actually eating a variety of foods on this diet in order to get the amount of protein and the essential amino acids that we need. So there's 20 amino acids in general. So amino acids are mostly associated with your animal proteins. 9 of them are essential amino acids. But if we eat a variety of whole grains, beans, legumes, vegetables, we can actually get all of our amino acids through a vegetarian or a vegan diet. So a vegan diet is the elimination of all animal proteins plus cheese, and really any animal product, so including like honey, things like that. So vegan is very strict, where a vegetarian diet is, depending on the vegetarian lifestyle you choose, some people still eat fish, but they don't eat any poultry or meat. Some people will have eggs and cheese, but won't eat fish or any meat or poultry. So it's really a continuum. That's why I say, you could follow a vegetarian or vegan diet. You could do it once a day. You could do it once a meal if you want. You could do it 1 day a week if you want. But you don't need to follow a vegetarian or vegan diet to get the most benefit from sort of a quote unquote healthy meal pattern, if that makes any sense. So this is just some examples of how you can get adequate protein throughout the day from non-animal sources. So especially now, there's a lot of legume or bean-based pasta. So you'll see like a lentil pasta or chickpea pasta. This an example is that chickpea pasta, 2 ounces, has 14 grams of protein. So that's really rich in protein. It does taste different. So sometimes it does take a little getting used to. So, but this is, if you want to follow a more plant-based diet, you can easily get protein throughout the day. And this is just an example of a meal for a vegan diet, and you could see that you could get 65 grams of protein throughout the day. So generally, we want to get at least 20 grams of protein at each meal, which gets us to 60 grams of protein. And again, everyone's protein needs are a little different, but that's just an example that you could easily get to adequate amounts of protein in a vegetarian or vegan diet. And a study actually demonstrated that individuals who followed a plant protein-based diet had a lower risk of frailty in older women in a 2022 study. And I found that interesting, and because I'm curious as to sort of why. And it could be because they're eating lots of whole grains, lots of beans and legumes, which are rich in iron, your B vitamins as well, and you're maintaining more of a healthy weight. So you're generally going to have less risk for frailty. Common, again, throughout these diets is really the usage of also herbs and spices as we cook. So with following these diets, it's sort of innately built in that we're going to be eating and using more fresh fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains. So we're going to be doing more cooking and less relying on prepackaged cooked meals. So you're going to be naturally using more fresh herbs and spices to be adding flavor to your meals. So we know that they're rich in phytochemicals, they're anti-inflammatory, they have antioxidant properties, they can improve blood flow to the brain, and there's these bioactive compounds, which are the phytochemicals, which have anti-carcinogenic properties. Most of the studies have been done in animals, but the belief that there's also the anti-carcinogenic effects in humans as well. So I was going to dive into more of these nutrients and why, sort of the role they play in healthy aging. So omega-3s, so I'm sure all of you guys have heard omega-3s and wondering why, what's the big deal about it, right? So omega-3 fatty acids are essential fatty acids, which means our body can't make the omega-3 fatty acids that we need. So a little chemistry. I know you guys were not prepared for this. No, so the difference between saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Does anyone know the difference, and why is saturated fat so bad for us? Yeah, so going back down to like the chemistry of it, so we know, right, saturated fat is solid at room temperature, right? Your Crisco, your butter, that's solid at room temperature. Your unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. Your olive oils, your canola oils, your vegetable oils, right? And why is that? Why is saturated fat solid at room temperature? The reason is because saturated fats, they don't have double bonds in their chemical structure, so they're actually linear, they're straight. So when saturated fats when they're packed together, they can lie flat straight on each other, which makes them compacted, which makes it solid at room temperature. Saturated fats have this double bond, so when you try to lay them flat, you can't. So there's this space between them. So they can't solidify at room temperature. So that's why they stay liquid. And so the fats basically react the same way or act the same way in our bodies when we consume them. And so our cells are built on the foods that we eat. So when we eat a diet that's really high in saturated fats, not only do the saturated fats, can they clog our arteries, and when it clogs our arteries, right, our arteries get sort of narrower and narrower. But what also happens, the saturated fats are incorporated into our cell membranes, so which means our cell membranes become very rigid, which means that the cells can't protect the inside of the cell from basically those pollutants and those free radicals I was talking about earlier. So they enter the cell, causing cell damage, which leads to chronic disease and leads us through that aging process as well. But the saturated fats, when they get incorporated into our cell membranes, they're wiggly. So actually, because they're more fluid, they can protect our cells from free radicals or the pollutants from entering into the cells, causing that damage. Another example would be who has seasonal allergies. Yeah, they're not fun, right? Our body is reacting to the seasonal allergies, right? To pollen, to hay fever, and it's in this inflammatory state causing our allergic reaction. But what studies have shown is that the more fluid your cells are when you have seasonal allergies, the cells are better to protect your cells from the allergens entering into the cells, causing that allergic reaction. So if that makes any more sense. So omega-3 fatty acids, the reason why they're so important, they are considered unsaturated fat. They're fats that we can't create in our own body. And so that's why we rely on eating fatty fish, eggs, dairy, all are sources of omega-3 fatty acids as well. So what's important is that we know is the ratio between omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-6 fatty acids, I don't know if you've heard, I feel like it's been in the news more recently, has gotten like a really bad rap being pro-inflammatory. Omega-6s are terrible for you. Yes, they are pro-inflammatory, but you need omega-6s and you need omega-3 fatty acids. And it's really the ratio of the two. And omega-6 fatty acids are found abundantly in our diets. So that's why we naturally eat more omega-6s than omega-3s. But if we sort of outlie that with increasing our consumption of fatty fish or other sources of omega-3 fatty acids, we can sort of even that out. Again, we already talked really about the phytochemicals. So B vitamins. So B vitamins are so important as we age, right? So part of B vitamins is B12, folic acid, niacin is part of it too. So it's important for our immune function, for our energy metabolism. It's important for our DNA repair and synthesis. The reason why I started talking a little bit about like the chemistry of the saturated and unsaturated fats and the cell membranes and the free radicals, right, is because as we're talking big picture here with nutrition, right, is eat fruits, eat vegetables, eat whole grains. What really the aging process is, it happens at the basic chemical breakdown of our bodies. So our cells, our DNA, and that's why I brought it up, is because when it comes down to it, it really gets down to the health of the little cells of our body and the DNA synthesis and repair of those minute, right, little microorganisms that we can't see. And then B vitamins is important for our neurocognitive functions and our brain health, cardiovascular health, and osteoporosis in particular for women as we age, right? We want to have strong, healthy bones, so God forbid if we fall, we don't break something. And then fiber, I'm sure you guys have all heard, the fiber helps lower your cholesterol, it helps make you full, it can help promote healthy gut microbiota, which is basically the good bacteria in our stomachs. And it can reduce certain risk of cancers, in particular colorectal cancer. So protein. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, the importance of adequate protein as we age to maintain our lean muscle mass. The recommendation is that we have 20 to 30 grams of protein at each meal, so 3 times a day. Does anyone know what maybe like 20 to 30 grams of protein might look like? So it's not a lot, surprisingly. So it's about 3 ounces of chicken, so like about the size of your palm. Usually we have a lot more protein than that, in particular, usually at supper time. So what studies have found is this graph here on the left this is how we typically eat, right? Our breakfast is usually lower in protein. Our lunch has a little bit more protein maybe, but then we get to dinner and we overload our plate with protein. However, which is fine when we're younger. I mean, it's not ideal. No matter how old you are, you can only really absorb and metabolize about 30 grams of protein in one sitting. So most of that protein that you're eating at dinner time, you're peeing out. You're not utilizing any of it. But as we age, it's even more important that we eat consistent amounts of protein as the day goes on, because in order to metabolize and utilize that protein for muscle mass preservation, we need to be eating 20 to 30 grams at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Studies have shown, too, that there was a study done a couple of years ago, and it looked at participants were from their 40s all the way up into their 90s. And it looked at men and women, and the study found that the participants who followed the same exact resistance exercise regimen and ate a diet similar like this with the protein spread throughout the day evenly, not utilizing any protein drinks like Ensure, Boost, Premier Protein. This was solely getting protein from food, not from supplements. That the individual who was 90 doing resistance exercise gained muscle mass at the same rate as the 45-year-old man did. So it shows you that yes, as we age, we naturally lose muscle, but it doesn't mean that has to be our trajectory of aging. So if we stay physically active and eat well throughout the day, we can actually maintain our strength. And why is it important to maintain our strength? Not only do we want our muscles, we want it to be healthy, adequate muscle. So like we can have muscle, but sometimes it's called sarcopenia too, where the fat strands can enter into our muscles. So our muscles aren't as functional as healthy muscles are. So, and what does muscle do? It keeps us up, exactly. It gives us strength to walk, gives us strength to go up and down stairs. It gives us strength to cook, to open up, jars in the kitchen to keep cooking independently. And my future isn't good when it comes to opening up jars because I can't do it now. This part, I feel like this part is easy. I know I need to eat fruits. I know I need to eat vegetables. I know I need whole grains and lean protein. But how do I put it all together, right? Like that, to me, is the struggle. And then it's trying to get excited about food or, coming up with new ingredients. And I don't know about you, but I feel like all I do lately is cook the same food over and over again. And beans too, like you could get dried beans or you could get canned beans. Either one is good. Usually the canned beans are just easy, right? And what I always recommend is for canned foods too, if you're watching your sodium, dump it in a colander and rinse it with water, and you're actually getting rid of most of the sodium that way too. So try to make your life easy. You don't need to do everything from scratch. So in conclusion, we know that the Mediterranean, the DASH, the MIND diet all lead to a decrease in inflammation, improved cognitive function. Following those diets can improve our sleep and decrease our risks for chronic disease, all contributing to the road of healthy aging. So again, it's not all or nothing. It's trying to start with where you're at and slowly, make little changes that you can sustain over time. And you don't have to be 100% to gain the benefits of healthy aging. As we age, just aging in general, most of us will be in low-grade chronic inflammation. It is what it is, unfortunately. But usually, like when we get sick and say we have pneumonia, our bodies are going to be very stressed. And part of the healing process is the inflammatory process. So if we draw that lab value, the lab value will be high in those instances. Usually, though, you don't need to measure it. No. Usually, it's more done sort of in the acute care, like hospital setting, to see sort of the degree of sickness we're in, and that can help change the trajectory of care. But in general, we're all in sort of this, and some inflammation's good, right? Like say if we cut ourselves, but if we cut ourselves and it gets red and it gets hot, right? That's an inflammatory process starting the healing process. So it's a balance of, we don't want to always be in this high chronic state of inflammation, but some inflammation is natural and it's okay. It's part of the sort of the bodily processes. Again, when I was driving here, ironically, on the radio too, studies have found that a lot of these protein supplements, in particular these powders, are actually really high. Some of them are high in lead, so that's something you want to be careful of too. There's a time and place for these protein supplements and these protein powders, but if you generally have a good appetite and you could get your protein from food, I say go there. If you're struggling or if you have a busy day and you feel like you didn't have time for an adequate lunch and you want to grab like a protein shake and a yogurt or something, like that's fine too. But it's not really necessary. I used to work part-time many years ago at a gym, and in particular these high school boys too would come and get these protein shakes, and they would ask for 2 scoops of protein powder, which was a total of 60 grams of protein. And every time I was like you're just throwing your money away because you're peeing out 30 grams of it. You only need 1 scoop, right? So, but it makes people feel better. They feel like they're getting more. If you want to do some organic foods, I always say go for the fruits and the vegetables that you're going to be eating the skin of. So like apples in particular, like your blueberries or strawberries, any berries, is better to get organic because those skins are really thin too. But if you like your oranges, your bananas, right, those heavy peels, you could just get regular, conventional bananas and oranges. So it's really, no, that's okay. No, that's good. They're both nutritional for you. So it just depends on sort of, where you want to spend your money. Yeah. So I always say, if you're watching, especially nowadays because everything's so expensive, pick and choose what you do, what you choose for organic. Yeah. Like you don't need to get organic Oreos. I always see that, and I don't know, I just find that funny. I was like, they're still Oreos. And they're vegan too. So not all vegan foods are healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.